Hello everybody, Maverick Mike here. Today is Saturday, July 25th, and our old friend the 2005 Tundra is back for round 2. However, Hurricane Douglas is barreling down on us here. We're trying to get ready and do some hurricane prep, and I'll do a little bit on this for what I can do for right now. So, just a quick review. This thing came in before with multiple misfire P0300 series codes. We did a compression check on this thing and found that cylinder numbers 4 and 6 were below spec, especially cylinder number 4, which was down to 125 psi. This truck came back a little bit earlier than I wanted it to. I have a cylinder leak down tester on order, which hasn't arrived yet. With that leak down tester, I'll be able to tell whether we have worn rings or valves that are staying open, or possibly whether we have a crack in that head bleeding over to the next cylinder. But as you remember last time, I was a little bit worried about the electrical circuit of the coils, and so I just did a few things right off the bat without really doing any testing. I placed additional grounds in the circuit, parallel grounds, and just to try to eliminate problems, especially since I know that this thing came completely apart and was put back together by someone, and I don't know if they put the grounds together right. So I went ahead and I made parallel circuit grounds, and I'll show you those right now. Alright, so right here is the grounding point for the coils on both banks right here. And I took it apart. It was quite corroded and there was some paint on it, so I took my wire brush to it, I cleaned everything up. And so I added this additional ground circuit right here, which runs over to the body. So that circuit that I added runs right over here to the body ground. I also cleaned this one up and made sure that that was a good ground. In addition to that, I added another engine block ground on the passenger side of the vehicle. I added this line right here, which was an old jumper cable that was broken, so I figured I would just reuse the wire on that. So that's jumper cable wire. So it comes over here from the inner fender well body ground over to the engine block right there that you see with the yellow connector. So I added all those parallel grounds just to try to ensure the integrity of the ground circuit on this vehicle. I'm looking to avoid problems, and it was really simple and easy for me to put parallel grounds on, so that's what I did. Okay, so my friend who owns this vehicle requested a fuel injector cleaning, and I thought that was putting the cart before the horse. I want to ensure that the engine is solid first before I do something like clean the fuel injectors. But he requested that, so I thought, okay, if he wants a fuel injector cleaning, we're going to go ahead and do that. It is a good idea at least to get a baseline of what the fuel pressure is on this vehicle. So while I was running the engine, I pulled out this relay, which disabled the fuel pump, and the engine ran until it ran out of fuel pressure. Then I was able to go ahead and hook up my fuel pressure test kit. Alright, so right here is where I connected my fuel pressure hose. It's just a standard hose connector over here with an adapter on a banjo bolt. Alright, and here's my fuel pressure gauge set up. So right now I have about 18 pounds of pressure in this thing, and that's after approximately 3-4 hours now. So the pressure is going down slowly. There may possibly be a fuel leak back into the tank. But anyway, let's go ahead and get some pressure readings right now and take a look at this. So I'm going to cycle the key on now, and you would expect to see the needle jump up when I cycle on the key. So let's go ahead and do that right now and see if there's any movement. Cycle key on 1, cycle key on 2, cycle key number 3. So I cycled the key 3 times, and we still have 18 pounds of fuel pressure in here. When I cycle the key, I expect to see it jump up someplace around 30, 35. I believe the spec for this vehicle running is between 40 and 43 or something like that. That's obviously not working right now. That's an issue that needs to be addressed. But let's go ahead and start it and see what kind of fuel pressure we have. Looks like we're running about 43 pounds of pressure right now, which is good for this system. It's about what I would expect to see. Alright, we're going to get set up to do the fuel injector cleaning right now. So I'm going to go ahead and disconnect the vacuum hose, going to the pressure regulator, and I'm going to plug that. Alright, we're going to run the engine a little bit and pull the fuel pump relay out so that the engine dies. That'll be our next step. So we're going to leave this fuel pump relay disabled just like this, and we're going to actually run the engine from the pressure in the can. I'll show that to you. Alright, there's various fuel injector cleaning setups, and they're all good. I like to use this type because it's pressurized and I don't need shop air. And since I'm mobile, sometimes I'm doing this in somebody's garage, sometimes I could be doing this on the side of the road someplace. So I use this type just because it's pressurized and I don't need anything else. So I'm just going to bleed off the rest of the pressure here. So now we're going to go ahead and hook up our fuel injector cleaning can, and it just screws on. Alright, now I'm going to slowly open up the regulator and get some pressure flowing into the system. And the system in this particular vehicle runs around 40 to 43 or so psi. And so I'm just going to go ahead and increase the pressure slowly until I have around 30, 35 maybe. Okay, now we're going to try to start this vehicle and run the engine on the contents of this can. Pressurized, the pressure's coming up through the regulator, right into the fuel rail, and this is what's running the engine because the fuel pump is disabled. So we're just going to let this run until this engine starts to stumble a little bit, and then we're just going to shut this engine off and let it sit for a while, just like that, and let the remaining cleaning fluid in there do its job. So right now, I have this engine running about 32 pounds, turn it up a little bit. What'll happen is this gauge will continuously go less and less and less, and I'll keep turning the regulator up until it's really not enough pressure left in the can to run the engine. Alright, the engine's been running for several minutes. I got the pressure set just below 40, and this engine is still running off the contents of this can. So once the pressure starts dropping some more, and the vehicle starts to surge a little bit, I'm just going to shut it down and I'm going to let the contents of this can sit in the fuel system to try to dissolve any of the carbon buildup that's in there. Alright, you can see that there's almost 40 pounds of pressure in this system. It's like about 38, 37. And I am just going to let the engine sit, and I'm going to let the chemicals do their job in the fuel system to try to loosen up any deposits or anything that may be clogging the nozzles of the injectors, and hopefully the vehicle runs a little bit better after this. Alright, it's been about an hour. Spent that time getting ready for the hurricane. Went around the yard cleaning things up, trying to move anything that could become a deadly projectile. We're going to go ahead and start this truck now, and we're just going to let it run until the contents of this can are done. Alright, let's increase the pressure a little bit on this thing. So it keeps running. Alright, it seems to like about 35. So I keep turning the regulator up, but the pressure does not keep increasing, which means that this can is just about empty. So let's just turn it all the way up and let everything flow. It's going to flow out of this can. And we'll just let this engine run until it dies. Alright, the engine has died. It will no longer run. There's only about 20 pounds of pressure left in this can here. So what I'm going to do now is remove this canister, and then we'll do a fuel pump volume test to see if this system is capable of putting out a decent volume of fuel. So now we're going to reconnect the fuel pump relay, start this thing up, and do a fuel pump volume check. Plugging the relay back in. Alright, the specification calls for the system to be able to put out 1 liter in approximately 30 seconds. So I just grabbed this soda bottle. It is 1 liter. And just got the top of it off just so I can stick my regulator in here like this. So while the engine is running, I'm going to open this all the way, and hopefully we still maintain enough pressure for the engine to keep running. I may have a bad connection here. Fuel should be coming out at a significantly higher rate. So I may have a restriction in my Schrader valve or something like that. This is not really going to be a valid test. Alright, for your engine to run correctly, you need the correct pressure, and the fuel pump needs to be able to put out the the correct volume of fuel. That volume test was inconclusive to me. I believe that I have a restriction in my line, and while I can get a pressure reading, when I went to do the volume test, I would open up my regulator. The pressure would drop down to 0 and fuel would just barely be dribbling out from right here. Usually it comes spraying out really good, so there must be something wrong with either the Schrader valve or something like that where it's allowing a pressure reading but not a full volume reading. So in my mind, that test, that volume test, was inconclusive. So what I'm going to do now is relieve the pressure and remove all the hoses, and then we'll start it up and check for leaks. Alright, so the problem with this, with the Schrader valve inside, is stuck. This is a brand new fitting, and this is not allowing fuel volume to come out through the valve, and that's why we were not able to do that volume test correctly. It was the fault of this fitting, and this one is brand new, so I'll see if I can warranty this thing. Alright, I put the fuel system banjo bolt back in, started the engine, checked for leaks, no leaks, we're all good there. And surprisingly, the engine is running a little bit more smoothly. Maybe there was some carbon buildup, maybe there was some faulty spray patterns on some injectors that were contributing to the engine roughness. But it is running smoother now and doesn't sound like a diesel engine anymore. But I'm still concerned about the low compression readings on cylinders number 2 and 4. So that's something that we're going to have to chase down, because no matter how good everything else is, if you have cylinders that are out of spec in regard to compression, they're not pulling their weight, they're not doing their job, your engine is never going to run nice and smooth. You're going to have emissions problems, you're going to have bad fuel economy, you're going to have a whole host of things. And even if everything else is perfect, if you've got low compression on a couple of cylinders, there's not too much that you can do about that. So what I'm going to do at this point is call my friend, let him know what I did, and have him take the vehicle for now. Have him come back when I have the tool to be able to do the leak down test properly, and then we'll take it from there. So until next time, mahalo and a hui ho!